Hello, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. Chris will be joining us shortly, barring any kind of technical stuff. Good to see Tim here as well. If you're joining us either on YouTube or LinkedIn, let me know where you're coming from as we get ready to talk about Chris's new book or upcoming book. By the time this episode's released, it'll be out into the world, but it's called Intentional: How to Finish What You Start. If there's any doubt as to how much I've gone through this book, my good old-fashioned dog-eared pages will give you a sense. And this kind of conversation it'll kind of move all over the place because that's typically what we do here. So, hopefully we will have everybody good to go here shortly. Again, this episode, Chris's book is scheduled to come out at the beginning of January. If I take a look on the back here, it looks like, yes, right that first week of January. From what I can tell here, January 6th. So this episode will air around the time that the book actually drops, but pre-orders are totally available already. Chris is a friend of mine. He's been part of my productivity world for a number of years, back from his days when he was experimenting with productivity and the Productivity Project, even just on the blog before the book came out. That's his first book. Of course, he's written several since then, including Hyperfocus and How to Calm Your Mind. And this is just the latest in his book writing efforts. And again, hopefully we will get him here shortly. There we go. We've got him coming in here. Speaking of which, so I'm going to bring Chris in here now, and hey, here we go.
Oh, there's people watching.
There are people here.
Hey, people here. How you doing? Good
to see you. We've got again. I'm holding on to my copy right here. Right. So I'm very.
I just got finished copies in yesterday.
Nice.
Yesterday. Oh, look at that beautiful
thing. Did you get that orange that you were looking for? So it's always kind of interesting when you're trying to like color match and stuff with things like that. It's like, this is what it looks like in print. This is what it looks like on the screen. This is like Bengals colors. Now, I mean, normally I'd be thrilled about that, but the Bengals suck this year. So
that's fun. It should be a perfect Pantone 1505C.
What's the name of that color? Do they have an official name for it?
I don't know. Do they name all their colors?
They name a lot. I think, because they're the ones that do the color of the year, right?
Yeah. This year it's like a white, like a boring white,
which is very vanilla of them.
Yeah.
You should look at. I guarantee you, there's a name for that color. There's got to be. There's got to be a name for it. I mean,
intentional orange.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, Intention Orange. There you go.
Have you seen the Canadian cover, by the way?
No, I haven't.
Oh, the UK, the US.
This is American, right?
Yeah, and UK.
UK, so it's the same. Yeah, because UK's covers have often looked something like the UK's had some of this vibe to it. Because I saw, was it I saw Hyperfocus when I was in London. But go ahead, do you have the Canadian one?
Oh yeah, so the same guy designed Hyperfocus and this orange intentional cover. And I emailed him to thank him because I love it so much, and he said, it took like months, and it's wild. Like the simpler the cover, the more time it takes. Is like isn't it just like a circle with an arrow? But of course it takes more time. This is the Canada cover.
Oh, see, so that'll be interesting because I'm glad you told me that, because obviously the book isn't out yet as we're recording this and streaming this. So hopefully, by the way, if any of you have any questions about the book itself or any of Chris's past works, throw them in the chat. We'll definitely touch on them because the body of work that's unfolding here is incredible. But I'm glad you told me that, because I would have gone in to like my local bookshop and been, because I always see the new books when they come out, right? And I've been like, what the heck is this? Because Canada rarely gets a different color than the US. It's normally the UK that gets a different cover.
Usually. Usually you look at the bestsellers list in the US and the UK, and it's the same books, many of the same books, but you wouldn't know it looking at just pictures of the books, because they go in a completely different direction. But I really pushed for this orange one, and they went with it in the US, and in Canada they went their own way, and I love the cover they've come up with for that too. It's just interesting, different markets. You would think one cover would either be like good or bad, but I guess there's a cultural element to it too, like a different class of books almost in these different territories. You learn so much. Book number 4, you know?
Yeah, well, I was going to say that I wonder if, because I mean, and you and I've been in the space long enough to know that maybe the UK and US look at productivity and time management, they do differently than Canadians do. Like,
Yeah.
productivity.
Yeah.
When it comes to intentionality, like the pointedness of this is like, look, this is what really ultimately, like, without this, I mean, you know what I've said, intention plus attention is what productivity really is. And you circle around that, no pun intended, in the book as well. But when it comes to, the other cover, it's a bit more, to me, almost like the vibes are different. Like, it's just almost like it feels almost like, for lack of a better term, and I mean, I'm just going to blanket it, like wellness more than business. Wellness, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's this.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's it. But I mean, they've done their research. They know what the deal is. So
they know better than we do. That's for sure. Yeah.
Well, it is interesting though, because I think, like, when it comes to this kind of work, I can say, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this before we dive really into the book itself, is productivity. The pursuit of productivity is different in Canada than in the United States, I have found. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like their values, which we're going to get into. The cultural values, I think, are different. And we're not even talking, we're not going down a political rabbit hole here. Just in general, I think that.
Let's avoid all that.
Please, let's avoid that. But I mean, like, I think there's some sensibilities that are different, right? And I think that makes it a little bit more of a, because whenever I've worked with Canadian clients, it's more about like GDP and productivity in terms of not in terms of personal development or anything. Like, they don't think about it quite in the same way, or they don't approach it quite in the same way. That's what I've experienced. I don't know if you've experienced the same thing, but I have.
Well, yeah, it's interesting, the different books. Like, I'll speak candidly here.
Sure.
So my biggest book in Canada is called How to Calm Your Mind. And next, like, number 2 selling for me up here, it's like not even close. How to Calm Your Mind has cleaned up in Canada relative to the other books, whereas in the US market, it fell like flat on its face when it encountered the booksellers market. It sold, I think, maybe like 10 or 20,000 copies in the US, which is far, like, it's a good, I'm happy with that number. I'm happy with the people who it's connected with and helped. But it's far, far lower than a book like Hyperfocus in the US. Whereas Hyperfocus, when it was introduced in Canada, that totally flopped. Whereas internationally and in the US, I think we just crossed 400,000 copies sold of that book. And so you think, like, How to Calm Your Mind, doing gangbusters in Canada, but not in the US, kind of mid, I think, in the UK, relative to the other books. All I have are my other books for the relativity of it all. But Hyperfocus, I found, was a very interesting phenomenon, because I think, it's the attention component, the intention component. Hyperfocus was about attention. Intentional, as you can imagine, is about the intentional component of it all. I think intentional will find that warmer reception, maybe given the different cover up here. But I really find it interesting when idea meets culture. There's a cultural response to the idea. Yeah. And sometimes it embraces the idea. Other times it's like, no, thank you. We don't need Hyperfocus up here in Canada, when it's really essentially a book about mindfulness.
Sure. So the thought process I immediately go to is, Canadians are fine with being told what to do and how to do it, how to calm your mind. Other audiences are like, you can't tell me how to do this. But if you've got a sparky enough word on the front, it's going to be like, what's that? What's this? It will be interesting, because now that and How to Calm Your Mind was great. I think what I really appreciate about all of your work is, again, it's that body of work that's been assembled, right? You have, since day one, been curious about this phenomena from the start. And instead of, to draw a comparison that I can do based on, reading both of your kind of journeys, Cal Newport, yourself, right? Both curious about these different phenomena, but approaching it it's like
Hmm.
you can see each other from your respective paths and can wave to each other. But
Yeah.
there is enough delineation there that I think is fascinating, because you're going deep into very specific kind of facets of it, right? Like, again, hyper
Yeah.
focus, the facet of attention, how to
Hmm.
calm your mind, the facet of mindfulness,
Hmm.
intentional, the facet, the facet of intentionality. Cal's done
Yeah.
similar things in maybe broader strokes, right? Like, not
Yeah.
deep work is broader, digital minimalism broader.
Hmm.
He's tackled, obviously, slow productivity. That's very broad, right?
Yeah.
As opposed
Yeah.
to, let me look at this. Let me look. It's not unlike. Well, Tiago Forte is writing a book about the annual review, right? Like, he's diving
Hmm.
into the
Hmm.
reflective piece, which comes up
Yeah.
again in this book. So let's dive in. First off, what's a hierarchy? I've never.
I'm trying to make hierarchy a thing in the book. Yeah, so it's interesting you mentioned Cal and I finally share a cover here. Cal,
Yep.
the Cal's
Yep.
in tiny
Yeah,
print
you
at the
got the
top,
blurb at the top. Yep.
and big print. I think Tiago's on the back. Yeah, Tiago's on the
There
back
you
there
go.
too. Um, so full circle there. It is interesting, when you look at a topic like intentionality, human intentionality. You're exactly right. I've been sort of circling around this idea of intentionality for, by gosh, a decade. Every book that I've written, all three of them plus the Audible original, they incorporate this idea of becoming more intentional. But I've never found enough meat on the bones with the idea of intentionality to be able to dive into it completely, because I didn't want to write a book about intention that's like a few ideas and the rest is fluff. I want like a lot of meat that people can sink their teeth into, both on the science and on the tactical end. And it took about a decade to get there, which surprised me. But it's interesting you say hierarchy, and one of the big unlocks for me in the process of writing this book was seeing the science of values. And so values, human values, it's this topic that I've always kind of, my eyes have glazed over when I've heard people talk about it, because all I could think of are those like corporate exercises where some consultant comes in and they have a list of 100, and it's like, these are your values, circle the ones you love. And there's no science behind that, though. But like the fascinating thing to me is when you look at the science behind human values, there's a literal gold mine about what we value on a fundamental human level. And what the research shows is that what we value, those are our ultimate intentions in our life, that they are what we are after. So some of us, you mentioned Canadian cultural values. Self-direction is one of the 12 values that we all share in different amounts. It's incredibly high in Canada. Maybe it's no wonder they went their own way with the cover of
Yeah.
Intentional. And so, but we all have different amounts of all 12 of these values, but they're not only our ultimate intentions in life, they are the motivational core that we all have, that either motivates us to do something or repels us away, and then we don't want to do something. So you need to accommodate values in the pursuit of intention, but you don't need the list of 100. You just need to figure out which of the 12 are the strongest for you, and then let the intentions in your life, insofar as you have the latitude to make this happen, flow from those and connect with those across all the different layers of intention we have in our life.
Why do you think we always focus on like Maslow's hierarchy of needs as opposed to this values research? Because I've never seen it before either. Like, I've never really,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And one of the first things I wrote down
Yeah.
in the chapter that's called values, which again permeates its way through the book, is
Yeah.
source of friction. And what I mean by that
Yeah.
is it's the source of friction. And you talk about this, the idea of like, if you don't have this, if something
Mhm.
is butting heads against your values, like an intent, like it's going to be either harder for you to do, or when you get to a
Mhm.
virgin, might be the thing you do just to avoid, right? Like you might go down that,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
hierarchy of needs, which by the way has been torn apart, built up. We're going to get into some of the pithiness that can come along with some of these frameworks and structures. SMART goals is going to be one of them, but because you go into that. But why do you think that we haven't really heard about this to the same degree, or even in blog posts or social media? Like, I've never stumbled across this in the same way, which, by the way, not surprisingly, it's layered, and you go into it in a very layered way throughout the book. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
You know what I honestly think it is? I think anyone who wants to talk about values doesn't want to go into Google Scholar and type in values. When you do, it's amazing what comes up. This theory of, and full credit where credit is due to Professor Shalom Schwartz. He pioneered this theory of fundamental human values that's been validated scientifically in more than 60 countries, cross-culturally, across hundreds of thousands of participants. It's the most active field of research in this field of values, and there basically is no second place. This is the science of values. And so, we talk about needs, and this is very much, focus on your values once your basic needs are met, once you have the safety, but it's kind of needs versus volition. So once you have the space to be able to go your own way in your work, in your life, we don't always have 100% space for volition. We're not monks living in a cave. I actually chatted with a lot of monks in piecing together this book who introduced a lot of surprising lessons about the nature of intentionality, which complemented the science almost perfectly, which I found interesting. But I think when we are able to create the space in our work and our life to act more deliberately, that is where values need to come into play. Because even if your ultimate goal is more achievement is one of the fundamental human values, or whether your goal is to help other people, benevolence is one of the fundamental human values, or whether your goal is just more pleasure and to be lazy with your time after work, pleasure is one of the 12 fundamental human values. That's what productivity is for. I ultimately think that, and I write about this in the book too, that we should be viewing success as the extent to which we're able to manifest our values in our everyday life, bring them to life in what we do. Because then we feel like what we're doing is completely connected with who we are. And I'm happy you touched on the different layers of intentionality. So there's the values component, but the interesting thing about intention itself, and it was so fun to nerd out about the science and the research on this stuff, that there are all kinds of different timelines across which we can become intentional. And we all know this on some level, right? Like, we want to, over the course of our life, make a contribution to the world. But that manifests it on different levels across the span of our life. Like, over these 18 years, we might want to raise a great family and build great humans and help them build themselves into being good people. And then over the next year, we might have goals with work, and over the next month we have the deadlines that we want to hit, and over the next week and day, and like now you have an intention to listen to the podcast or watch it. Hello, anybody watching. So this is what I find so interesting, is there are so many levels across which we can become intentional. And so this was another big unlock feels like such a corny word, but it was an unlock for me in piecing together these ideas, because you can make a model of sorts with all that houses all these layers of intention that we have in our life. And in the book, I call it the intention stack. So the broadest intentions we have in our life, those are our values. That's ultimately what we're trying not to knock over my water bottle as I gesticulate here. The values are our broadest intentions we have. They take place over our entire life. But on a shorter time span than that, we have our priorities in life, which are related to our values and our goals. Then beneath that, in length of time, we have the goals that we are making happen, the stories of change that we're creating. Then shorter than that, we have the plans that we have. And then shorter than that, at the very bottom, we have the present intentions that we have, things we want to get done today, this week, and so on and so forth.
Sure.
And so accommodating all these layers of intention in our life, that's how we achieve our goals. We don't just focus on the little band in the middle of this intention stack and think, okay, this is the goal that I hope to achieve. We have to follow it through down to the daily level, but it also has to connect with the broader goals in our life, the broader motivations we have in our life, which are the values that we have. And so it's really a book about goal attainment, because if we attain all the goals we set, then we're perfectly intentional.
Yeah, it's interesting when I look at the intention stack. The goals sit right squarely as the middle category, right?
Yeah,
Because it goes
goals. Yeah, goals are a bridge between what we do and who we are.
Right. I want to share some stuff that we're hearing in the chat. First off, I love Tim. Tim said, "Who wants to listen to the scientists when you can just make stuff up yourself?"
Yeah.
And we're going to talk
the
about
story of consulting. Yeah.
And then we've got Chase, who does a lot of research around a variety of things. He's really so he says, "I appreciate your helpful strategy to categorize triggers and plan responses to alter habits and break the impasse." You get into habit stuff in here pretty significantly as well. And the big challenge for Chase, he says, is the effort it takes to jump back into the context of work. So, like typically debugging a data science pipeline. So let's. I want to talk about first off, the idea of SMART goals. You talked about like the idea of, so when I can't tell you, you mentioned the values exercise, like circle the values that matter most to you, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And then you and I've heard about the avatar exercise. I can't tell you how many times you probably, like, who's your ideal audience? And it's like, you go through these exercises to the point where they're like, you could do it rote, right? SMART goals.
Yeah.
I was recently in a program around CBT, so cognitive behavioral therapy, and they were bringing up SMART goals. And my eyes rolled like visibly on the screen with the people I was on with, to the point where they're like, and I'm like, because we've gone through them so many times, and it's almost as if so what I loved is, and I did not know this, again, see, I just leave it up to Chris to do all this research.
That's okay. I don't mind.
So can you talk about, and you touch on this in the book, are SMART goals actually smart?
This was the most surprising thing that I uncovered over the course of researching goals. And by the way, I've written about SMART goals in the past for my website. And so when I encountered the research, I was kicking myself, because I thought, how could I not just search for the research on SMART goals before writing about them? Because they sound so obviously great, right? The word SMART is in the name. Who doesn't want to set a SMART goal? But you look at the actual research on them, the origin story of SMART goals. So it's actually very similar to the 10,000 step rule, which was, I think it was like a fitness gadget of some sort that, marketed the idea of 10,000. It's a nice round number each and every day, but there isn't really a research.
Gladwell brought it up. People jumped on it. Right. And then it became a thing. And I mean, heck, even Macklemore sang a song about 10,000 hours.
Oh,
right. Like,
the
there's
10,000
a song called 10,000 hours. Yeah. Yeah.
The 10,000 steps. People have 10 fingers. They love thinking in tens. Anything.
Right. But the steps thing, you're right. But I was thinking about the hours. But you're right. These things come up arbitrarily to a degree. It's just a nice round number. Yeah.
Well, exactly. I'm happy you brought that up, actually, because they sound so similar. And SMART goals are very much the same, where they sound amazing. SMART goals, this usually stands for specific, memorable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound, though everybody has different words for these things.
Right.
But the research on them identifies the fact that there is even research waste around them because of how unhelpful they are and how not conducive they are to helping us achieve our goals. So, they say to set realistic goals, but actually more challenging goals lead us to accomplish more. And so they more motivate us more when they're not like, when we actually having them be not only merely attainable but a challenge, so that we motivate ourselves into action. And there's redundancy in the criteria as well. So aren't achievable goals also realistic, and aren't time bound goals specific? And goals actually don't need to be specific to be helpful. Especially, so there's two stages of a goal: the learning phase and the performance phase of a goal.
Yeah.
When we're in that learning phase where we're just getting acquainted with, okay, what does it actually take to run a marathon, having a specific goal can be counterproductive, because it for lack of a better word, makes us hyper focus on something that doesn't really matter.
You want scatter. You want that wider lens.
Yeah.
Right? You almost want that at the beginning because you don't know enough.
Yeah, exactly. And so actually, more specific goals at the beginning of a goal, when we're learning about it, can lead to more frustration. It can lead us to make us want to give up when we feel like we're not living up to these expectations that we have. And that's another topic of the book, where so often goals are really just predictions in disguise of where we believe our current and our future actions will take us, and those predictions become expectations, which lead us to disappointment. There's a whole psychology of goals in that regard too. But SMART goals, they are often counterproductive, and they don't really work. What does work is considering all of the different layers of our life across which we need to become more deliberate, as well as how desire plays into the picture, how aversion and procrastination play into the picture, and how critically motivation plays into the picture with our values.
You talked about sepia-toned goals too, which I love, especially because you mentioned the night owl part, and that has been so. It's interesting because we've been told societally, get up early, you should get up early, you should get up early, you should do this, none of us are immune to this, by the way, because in the book you talk about like, hey, maybe I should do this. I mean, after all, and again, you are somebody who is curious and will experiment on this kind of thing. But I love the fact that you again, can you share a little bit about the thought around that, like the idea of like, I'm a night owl, let's make these, and then where that term sepia-toned goals kind of came from?
Oh, 100%. So I'm a night owl as well. I do my best work at night. I love the night. And I struggle to get out of bed, very early in the morning. But for whatever reason, I think because of the culture that surrounds us,
the urge. You brought up the urge, which is very early on. Like you almost said urge. Like there's this urge to because it pulls. But anyway, sorry. Keep going.
There's that urge to conform to expectations that are expected. Conformity being one of the 12 values as well. But even knowing all that, on some level, I have this sepia-toned fantasy, this idea of being that early riser, waking up at 5 or 5:30 to read the Globe and Mail and meditate and do a bit of journaling, and maybe meditate a little bit more, maybe catch up on email and do all things that are holy with my hours, first thing in the morning. But then I realized every single time I implement this ritual into my life that I absolutely hate the ritual. I have to go to bed when friends want to hang out, when there's hockey games on, when concerts are happening, or else my entire next day is disrupted, and it just doesn't fit with the life I live or the biology I have, because of course we're all wired differently. We all have different chronotypes, and that it maps on top of interesting research, I believe, from Till Ronenberg, who found that there is no difference in somebody's socioeconomic standing based on what time they wake up at. So people who wake up at like 8:30 are just as successful as people who wake up at 5:30. It's how deliberate we are with our hours after we wake up that make the biggest difference. But it highlights the fact that when it comes to our goals, there are so many traps that we fall into, and most of the traps involve not considering the full intention stack truly, because a lot of goals, New Year's resolutions, 92% of people fail at the New Year's resolutions they make. And it's because it's so easy to daydream about that goal layer of the intention stack. But how does that filter down into plans? And below that, how does that filter down into what our day to day actually has to look like for us to attain the goal? And more broadly than that, how does this fit with our values? How does this fit with the kind of person we truly wish to become in our life, that on a lot of levels we already are? And so the biggest trappings of goal setting happen to be not looking at all the different layers of intention in our life. Because when you look at the day-to-day of a goal like waking up at 5:30, you blast through that sepia-toned filter and you realize that, wait a sec, it means going to bed at 9:30, and all this stuff is happening at 9:30. And so there's a great quote, and I forget who said it. I believe I mentioned this in the book. If not, it was in my head when I was writing this section, which is how we spend our days is how we spend our lives.
And
Mary
Dillard.
Oliver?
No, it was Annie
Annie
Dillard.
Dillard.
And you did mention, and it is in the book.
Okay, good. That's good. I'm pretty sure I put it in there because it is so relevant to goal setting, because we can't just have an idea of a goal. We need to consider the execution of the goal and the meaning of a goal at the same time, or else there's no way we're going to achieve it.
Right. It's funny, as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about the idea of, that Ted Lasso scene where he's playing darts. Where all things aside, obviously, I mean, spoiler alert, he's playing darts with the antagonist in the show, and the antagonist misjudges him, and he goes on this speech about be curious, not judgmental, etc. But I looked at something else. I don't know how to play darts. I don't at all. I always assumed that you go for the bullseye every single time, because that's where your attention goes, right? But there's that part that no one really talks about, especially if you're a person who plays darts. You just go right on by this, which goes back to your idea of you need to be broader with your view of things when you're looking at goals initially. And I think the barkeep says you need 2 20s and a bullseye. I'm like, why does he need 2 20s? I don't shouldn't it all just be bullseyes? And I think what that spoke to me on was this idea of we try to get too precise. Like we strive for precision, which is like, as opposed to looking at things like maybe from a wider lens of maybe tolerance. Like, hey, we hear about this all the time, minimum viable product, all that stuff. We've heard of we've also heard of big, hairy, audacious goals and all that stuff, right? We get all this stuff around that. And SMART goals, again, specific, measure, like all of that stuff to get so dialed in and precise that we might miss the mark, because that might not be the way to. So why I bring this up is, as the first thing is when I was going through the book, I was beaming ear to ear, because I remember having a confrontation with somebody once when I said every task is an intention. So if you call them intentions, then and they're like, no, intentions are bigger. I'm like, yes and no, because anything you intend to do, that's the root of the term, intent. That is, if it's on your list and it's an intent, ergo so. And you talk about the difference between default, deliberate, all that stuff. Yeah. How do you get somebody to view? Because I think that's one of the keys. If you and the book serves going through the book will help. But for somebody who gets locked in language, right? Like, well, no, this is a big project, so it's not an intention, or intentions are very, very grand, as opposed to, how do you get someone to rethink that? Because I think that's part of the problem around it.
Oh man, so this is where I am so happy to be with my fellow productivity nerds in chatting with you, because you mentioned the difference between default and deliberate intentions. So, all right, and this is the interesting thing talking about this book, is I'm just coming out of the cave to talk about this book in various places. So I need to really read the room who I go into the weeds with, but I'm going to go into the weeds here.
You and I both know you're going to get a lot of, so why'd you write the book? And you're going to get the placeholder boilerplate stuff, but with, obviously, like you said, You're
Yeah.
swimming. We're swimming in the same pool here.
Yeah. Let's go into the deep end. An intention. It was difficult to arrive at a definition of it, because you're right. Everybody does have these preconceived notions about what does it mean to be intentional. But the ultimate definition, I think, is the simplest one, which is an intention is just a plan that will do something. And we set these plans that will do things both deliberately and habitually, which might sound weird on the surface, right? How can an intention, which we think of as strategic, thoughtful, deliberated, how can it be habitual? But any habit that we have is really just our mind setting an intention for us in response to certain cues. A certain time of day happens, or we encounter certain people, or we feel a certain way, or we just did something else and that's associated with this thing. Something happened, and so that triggers a mental process for us to set a plan to do something that we then usually follow through with. The fact that something is a habit makes us more likely to follow through with whatever it is that we're intending to do. But the interesting thing, and this was a lesson that I learned from the monks, that then I connected with the research. Some things, you start with the science, and then you see the mental processes from chatting with monks. And this was a case of seeing mental processes and then going to the science. So there are two types of intentions in our life, which is very, very interesting to me, because I always thought about intention as something that was very deliberated. But there's the default intentions that we set automatically. These are any habit that you have. They're any way of speaking and acting, everything for just your default way of being. And then we have the deliberate intentions that we have that we layer on top of the default intentions in our life. And so in the example I give in the book, I give the example of like some like movie protagonist where they're going through the same dull humdrum motions of their life, essentially on autopilot mode, just living on default, pure habit energy in everything they do. Right? They wake up, they go to the same dead end job. They do this, they sit down at the computer, they go home, they make the same. But then something happens and it's like, boom, they snap out of the defaults, and then they decide what they really want to do. They want to like become a boxer or something,
you're describing the film Nobody by Bob Odenkirk with Bob Odenkirk.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of movies like this.
Yes, but you're right.
Yeah, yeah. But we all have moments of awakening like this. Like if you were to wake up and the whole family was gone and it was the weekend, and maybe you're just in bed. Maybe you'd live on default mode for a little while. Maybe you just kind of go on habit energy and go on your phone for a while. But then that moment will come. And you'll want to snap back to reality. You'll feel gravity setting.
Gravity.
Yeah. I made a few jokes with that line in the book, but my editors took them all out.
Well, you don't, because you don't lose yourself, you find yourself. That's
yeah, you really find yourself, your intention. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what they were saying. No, they weren't. But you eventually snap back into it, and you think, okay, what do I really want to do here? What do I really want to get out of this day? And that is when you set a deliberate intention for what to do differently. So if you look at where intention comes from, it's fascinating. Some intentions come from those default sources, right? We're on a road trip. We got to go to the bathroom. So we set an intention without even thinking to make a pit stop at the next, gas station. Or we have these impulses to avoid pain and experience more pleasure in our life. And so that leads us to talk to strangers or meet people or download a dating app or whatever it might be, setting intentions for those. But then we have the ones that are on the more deliberate side of the spectrum. It almost is a spectrum where we learn something. So a big source of intention is the lessons we have learned in the past. So you listen to a podcast like yours and you think, okay, next time I'm going to do that differently. And then when the next time rolls around, you remember that information you've internalized, which leads you to set an intention differently. You create a different intention. And then the ultimate source of deliberate intentionality is what is called our self-reflective capacity, which is our ability to look within ourselves, to ask questions of our inner world and really determine where we wish to go. And so there's all these sources of intentionality. Some are deliberate, some we have by default, which we call habits. And the time we spend across both in our life are about 50-50. And it's absolutely fascinating, the lay of the land, what leads us to make plans to do things, where intention comes from. And so by shaping those sources, we can shape the intentions we set and ultimately the life that we live. The research is really quite remarkable.
As you were talking about the idea of, snapping out of it, I wonder if, and you could, this is going back to the night owl part in your book, and we'll get into reflective practice before we wrap up here. But the sepia color goal that you were talking about, so becoming an early riser, I can tell you that I'm sure you have the same experience where if you're up too early, you're on default. Like if you're not listening to your body clock, you're not wired for that. And so the snapping out of it, I've noticed when I was getting up earlier that I'm like, why I was asking questions, right? Like, why is it taking me so long to get going? What's going on here?
Yeah.
And I had to go, you almost have to go back to I was going back to the studs a little bit, like, okay, let's pull this down and take a look. I'm like, it's because I'm trying to do back to values, back to priorities, the things above. I'm doing things that are counter to the way I am capable of doing my best work. So I'm going to reorient, re-engineer, build a new, I have this intention, this plan to do this thing. So, and letting go of that goal or that idea. In fact, I went a step further and I'm like, I'm going to lean in the complete opposite direction and be the night owl. Like say, look, like I'm going to champion it. And I wonder, did that, like when you were going through that experience of I'm going to be an early riser, was it that reflective practice and realizing maybe, hey, it's taking me longer to snap out of things. I'm disinterested for too much of my day. What's going on here? That sort of thing. Yeah.
Without self-direction or without self-reflection, it's nearly impossible to become more productive.
You stay on default, because right? You just stay on default.
You do what's latest and loudest when you're at work. You just do what's in front of you, whatever's urgent, whatever fire needs to be put out. And it's not a great way to be. I think most people find it in that mode when they enter into it. You just kind of stay where you are. You don't really find much more meaning. You don't find much more accomplishment. You don't become more like you end up being fine because you respond to the incentives that happen to be around you. You perform well, and things are just fine, right? But where there's a genuine opportunity to become better is when we tap into that self-reflective capacity, when we have some self-reflective loop around the changes that we're trying to integrate into our life. And so one thing that I'm a huge advocate for in the book is just a weekly goal review. And so just in case people don't buy the book, I need to share this tact. Like, make a list of all the goals that you have and review them every week, but don't just see them as static. These sepia-toned ideas, edit them as you go. Every week, do a little reflection and ask, okay, how much progress, what's my rate of progress with these goals? Am I satisfied with that? Or am I frustrated by that? And if I'm frustrated, why? Is it more of a challenge than I thought it would be? Is it because what I'm doing, so not just the outcome, the process goal that you have around something, which that's another little thing, but essentially just what you're doing.
Progress, there's lots of stuff in here that can help you with that for sure.
Yeah. There's a lot of tools in there for it. But is the process you're using to invest in the goal, is it effective enough? Is it motivating enough? Is the outcome that you're after aligned with what you value? So for example, one of the values is face. One of the 12 values is face, which is how we come across to other people,
Hmm.
in avoiding humiliation. But then we have the other ones that we've chatted about, like self-direction, which is going our own way, pleasure, which is just sense pleasure. Like some of your goals might be built around things that you don't value. So, 40% of the globe right now is trying to lose weight. That stat has been pretty steady for a while.
Hmm.
And so maybe you have a goal to like lose 10 pounds to look amazing by beach season or something. That's a goal built around face because it's looking good, which is how you come across to other people. But maybe face isn't a big value of yours. Maybe self-direction and pleasure are. And so a better goal might be, okay, experiment with 3 different ways of eating to find the one that is most pleasurable and
Yeah.
sustainable. So you're building it around self-direction and pleasure. And you won't get your goals right at first, right? It takes a lot of these incremental improvements, because remember, a goal is really just a prediction in disguise. It's a guess at where we believe our current and our future actions will take us. And I don't know if you've ever tried predicting stuff, but it's hard. It's hard to predict the future. We're not even futurists, nobody ever checks their predictions. They're usually wrong. And so we try to do this, but we're bad at it. And so we need to revise the goals that we have, edit them so they're more in line with these 12 values that we all share in different amounts, and drop the ones that aren't serving us, that we find to be just not connected to the kind of person that we want to become. Because ultimately, if you continue to edit the process that you're taking to achieve a goal, which is the bottom of the intention stack, the plans, the daily, the shorter term intentions, and you edit your outcome goals, which revolve around your values, which are really what you care about, and you can't find a way to align them, you're after something that is not for you. And so by pursuing that thing, you're pursuing it at the expense of every other thing that could be more meaningful and actually add to your life far more. So there's that opportunity cost to goals too. Every one goal we pursue, we decide not to pursue a million more.
Yeah.
And so it's being strategic, not just about the individual goals that we have, but also about the change that we're making in our life in general. So not getting pigeonholed by what we think we want, but looking at the values and connecting with what we really want.
Well, we got a couple things here before we wrap up. First, Jackie brings up a really good point. Saying things are fine is damning with faint praise. I'm like, that's a really, actually, I kind of like, because as soon as I hear the word fine, it reminds me of that, that cartoon
This
where
is
the
fine.
dog, the dog that's sitting amongst the flames going, this is fine, right? As if, that's the default, right? And of course, she also follows up with, can't wait to read this. Well, you can pre-order it right now. So there you go.
Pre-orders are open.
And Tim has also pointed out the book sounds really interesting. Seems to present a fresh stance on why we do and don't do things. Definitely one to order. Where can people pick up and pre-order the book, Chris? I want to be respectful of time, and this is great. By the way, tip for anyone who picks it up. Well, you can see there's like dog-eared, like I've dog-eared it like crazy. It's not and this is indicative of your work in general. It's not I'm going to blaze through this thing, and like you can't, especially when you get to the values piece, I would really spend some time reading and thinking, and the capacity for self-reflection, I think, is really important in that section. You can actually enact that. And that was one of the things where I'm like, okay, this is not going to be a book. I mean, I knew this going in based on your writing, but I'm like, this is not one that you can go, all right, let's pour over this in a day or two. It definitely needs some time. And for those that are members of Time Crafting Trust Premium, Sarah, who is our operations person, says Intentional already has had one suggestion for the book club, and it's not even out yet. It's not even out yet. So there you go. So Chris, where can people pre-order the book, pick it up, and where can they keep up with what you've got going on?
Yes. I'll share something candidly. This is the first book that I feel proud of creating.
Wow.
And to some people that they find it surprising, to other people it makes sense. I feel like I've been doing this productivity thing for 10 years, and that I finally created something that I'm proud to hold this in my hand, and I should be prouder of my other books.
You know what though?
But just relative, you know.
I will say that of all the books I've read that you've written, this one, it feels like I'm talking to you. This one feels more conversational, I think, other than your initial book when you were, quote, learning to write a book, right? Really, because like the blogging and all that stuff, where it was definitely about you. And I think that's the distinction. That was about what you were finding and you. And that's fine, because that's all you can speak from is your experience. But over the past, 15 years, easily, from when you've started this journey?
Or 10,
10 or you know, it's... This one feels like it's got the combination of those things, like what your research and such. It's like you're mixing, you know, the conversational tone with the research, and it's to that end. I think that's where I noticed. That's the thing I noticed.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. Yeah, this one feels special for whatever reason. So you can I do need to. Okay, I'll do this in 30 seconds.
Yep.
Because I want to mention the 12 values in case somebody doesn't buy the book. Think about these. I'll mention them quick. So self-direction, stimulation, so seeking novelty, pleasure, so sense pleasure, achievement, power is another. Actually, the least common value overall. Face, which we talked about, how we come across to other people. Security, which includes personal and societal security, value that's been going up recently, curiously, not surprisingly. Tradition, conformity, humility, universalism, which is protecting and preserving the welfare of people and of nature, and benevolence, so kindness and serving others. We're all the sum of our values. So the ones that stand out to you, that's who you are. So the book is called Intentional: How to Finish What You Start. I think it's the best thing I've ever made. Maybe it'll be the best thing I ever make. Maybe I could stop here. Maybe I've peaked. But yeah, you can pre-order it if you're watching this early. It comes out January 6th in US and Canada, January 1st in the UK and Commonwealth countries. And yeah, I think it'll really help you out. Thank you for having me on.
Chris, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. We're going to end the live stream now, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. Take care.